Hey everybody, welcome back to Divulgence. Today I am joined by spiritual healer and teacher and podcaster, the host of Rogue Soul, Lindsey Scharmyn. Lindsey, how are you? So great to have you back after all these years.
It's been so long. It's so funny. I was asking you before the show, I'm like, what year is it? How long has it been? Where are we? But thank
What
you.
planet? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, it's great to see you. Since it's been so long, the show is restarted. I have a whole new audience and stuff. So why don't we take a few minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can move on from there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could go so deep and so far and so wide. I'll just say I grew up in some of the deepest trauma you could imagine. I was assisted by spiritual guidance the entire time. I didn't know that for a while. I thought I was crazy for a second. And then when other people also experienced things I was experiencing, I tried to start to believe that actually the world was much weirder than I had ever thought from my very logical point of view and my very materialist atheist viewpoint, and that actually things were very, very strange. And it's only gotten weirder. Terrence McKenna said it would. He was right. So things we're getting to like a boiling point now. But, for my life, I was guided through learning more about the spiritual side of things, becoming more spiritual myself, and using my spiritual gifts. And I was a teacher in public and private schools, internationally and nationally, board certified master teacher for decades. And that one day I had another spiritual awakening and realized, nope, that's not it either. So I got into a van, drove around the continent, landed here in Colorado, and really dove into the spiritual work. And so I'd been doing spiritual work my whole life. It was like a background thing, right? My career and my house, buying houses, moving and all the stuff that life requires. And so now I've been able to, for the past 7-8 years now, just do Rogue Soul, do the show, do the spiritual work, do the healings, do the teaching, and all of that. So here I am now. I think most people would call me a conspiracy theorist and a researcher, and I've been that my whole life too. I don't really even think of it that way. I just think of it as someone who pays attention to things. So, call it what you want, alternative, whatever on the edge. But I've always been fascinated and interested, most specifically in our ancient collective history that is wildly suppressed. And I was also raised by a Vietnam veteran who was sent to, oh God, now I can't remember the country that wasn't Vietnam, next to Vietnam, that we were supposedly never in. And so he saw firsthand.
Cambodia?
What's that?
That wasn't
Yeah, no,
Cambodia. No.
it's the other side.
I can't remember either.
Everyone who's studied Vietnam knows what I'm talking about, and they're screaming it right now, but I always forget. But yeah, everybody kind of knew, conspiracy theorists at the time knew that we were there. But our government was like, no, totally not. But he was a sniper, my father, and he was sent into that country for secret special missions. And so he knew the lies of our government. Wow. Okay, maybe that sounds wrong too. Maybe. I don't know.
Unless it was China.
No, it must have been Cambodia.
Okay.
Anyway, people who know things better than me and remember better than me will know which one it was. Maybe it was Cambodia. And yeah, so he was always very anti-government, don't trust anyone, don't believe your teachers, don't believe the media, don't believe politicians, and don't believe your government. And so I had that in my background too. And yeah, it all kind of came together to whatever this is now that I am. So some people know me as the conspiracy theorist and researcher primarily, and don't know anything else about me. Some people know me just as their spiritual teacher and healer and don't know anything else about me. And some people know me through my books and don't know anything else about me. And it's kind of funny. Every once in a while I get people, even people who have supposedly loved me and followed me for years, will be like, "What? You have books?" I'm like, yeah, dude, I do. Oh my God. Do I not rep myself well enough? Probably not. So that's the short of it.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, congrats on all the great work that you've done. It's interesting that sharing the kind of the upbringing that you have and the person that you've come to be. So that's very interesting, and congrats to you. So when I reached out, essentially, I just kind of asked you about topics, and you definitely gave me one that we haven't talked about. You wanted to talk about cyclical destruction and the geomagnetic excursion. So where would you like to start with that, Lindsey? Because yeah, I'm almost 100% sure we haven't discussed that on the show.
Wow. Yeah, it's so fascinating to me. It's people who have been paying attention to this. You could have been paying attention to this since maybe even like the 40s, right? For a long time now. And there used to be a specific discipline in academia of catastrophism. And
Okay.
catastrophism was something you could study. You could become a professor of catastrophism, and you could be studying the evidence that Earth has gone through cyclical destruction. And here, there's apparently overwhelming amounts of evidence of this in various ways. And somewhere around the 40s, 50s or so, exactly when everything else started to get suppressed, so too did catastrophism. So, when the Rockefeller medicine really got even more heavy-handed, when academia got even more sort of controlled top down for what we could talk about, what we couldn't, that's also about the time that catastrophism quietly went away. And now, if you have since then talked about, tried to look into, especially in academia, anything about cyclical destruction on Earth, especially if you're connecting it to potential, pre-cataclysmic human civilization, you are just laughed out of the room. It's heavily suppressed. You're, anti-scientific or whatever, even though it's exceptionally scientific, well founded in science that this is all true. So that was a while ago, right? 40s, 50s or so. And so people who know, like people who've been studying this anyways because it's their passion outside of academia, like they know it's been a thing. And so you can find these people who are like old school catastrophists and people who have been on this bent for a while, but right now it's kind of having this resurgence in a lot of the alternative and conspiracy sort of circles and spheres, because it is essentially the time. It's either going to happen now very soon, or some people put it out as much as 30 years, but we're going to have catastrophe, it seems. And it's very different from sort of the usual. People like pick a catastrophe and they're like 2000, like what, Y2K, and like just stuff that we decide 2012 is going to be something, and then nothing ever happens. This is going back many cycles of tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of years that we can see the evidence of these cyclical mass destructions. And so we are pretty sure that because it's so well timed, it's going to happen again. So that's the kind of groundwork of what we would be going into. We're talking about this cyclical destruction, but we can also then talk about the mechanism, what's actually going to happen potentially.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. And yeah, I see what you say, that it's definitely coming back more in this kind of alternative media. I do kind of see some of that stuff that I guess you would categorize that under catastrophism.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. No, this is great. This is really
Yeah.
interesting. So where's kind of ground zero here for this?
Yeah, I mean, the whole globe,
So to speak.
or flat plate, whatever you want, I don't care, undergoes this catastrophe cycle, apparently. There's, of course, as we can see, if we go back to, there's evidence that perhaps the Sphinx and the pyramids are actually maybe even 100,000 years old or more. There's evidence that obviously Göbekli Tepe is minimum, even in accepted academia, 12,000 years old. So we already know that there's humans who have done things that are, lasting, large scale, and that implies a pretty advanced level of civilization, and that those then disappear and they're gone, right? Who built Göbekli Tepe? Like, we don't know. Whoever was in that region, obviously, but like we don't know much about them otherwise. And people will say, "Oh, they're hunter gatherers. That's what our history says they were at that time." Well, hunter gatherers don't build monolithic structures that are oriented to very specific stars and directions, and like that's not really how it goes. They might put up a few stones here and there, right? But they don't build these big structures. So Göbekli Tepe at least, but then beyond the accepted academic science, we can see Angkor Wat and the pyramids of Giza and the structures that are high in the Andes Mountains, right? These are all pretty obviously many, many tens of thousands of years old, if not further back. And so we can see the whole planet has had civilizations that pop up and they build and they get to some level and then they're wiped out and they're gone. And then we have another and it builds up and it gets to some level and it's wiped out and it's gone. And so, there's nowhere on Earth that is not indicated. We also have evidence, again, beyond accepted academia, but pretty well evidenced if you dig into it, that there are societies that had a different pole star. And that also indicates that the axial tilt at least has changed, if not, the entire sort of land masses being shifted around while humans were in a state of civilization. So we had civilization, and then that level of change occurred, and we have, even especially in some of the Sanskrit, Hindu, Indian sort of region, that there were people who came in from the north. They're always from the north, and they came in and they had different ways and different technologies, and they were looked at as sort of godlike beings or higher level beings that introduced higher level civilization to people. And so we have this evidence of that too. So the entire sky looked different. We know the Earth was oriented differently or arranged differently. And we have evidence of these peoples describing higher level technologies and civilizations coming, elsewhere. So we have the light-skinned, light-eyed people. We have that all over Earth. We have people think that it's mythology, but why do they all agree that they're light-skinned, light eyes, and carrying technology and teaching the ways of civilization, right? So we have lots and lots of evidence that the whole planet is involved, that everything can shift, that it can happen quite suddenly, and that humans have specifically lived through this many times. So even though civilization is erased or destroyed, people survive and they rebuild and start again. So at the very least, we know we are not in any way at the height of civilization right now. We're not at the top that humans have ever gotten to. We can't build the pyramids. We cannot do it. It's not possible for us. So whatever we had before was better than what we have now. Wherever we were, in our minds and our abilities was far beyond what we have now. So we have this delusion, that we're safe, which is a weird thing for anyone to think about life when the only thing you're ever guaranteed is death. The only thing you know for sure when you're alive is that you're going to die, right? Everything else is just a crapshoot. No, I'm not saying this to be like, pessimistic or depressing. It's just true, right? But we have this weird delusion that we're safe. We have this weird delusion that things will be the same, or that we can expect how tomorrow will look. And we have this really weird delusion that we are as advanced as we've ever been. And none of those things are true. Right. And it's part of why catastrophism is suppressed, because if you know that you came from a maybe even more advanced civilization or state, then you would look a lot deeper at your life. Right. You would look a lot deeper at why you're here. And you would definitely perhaps reject things like Rockefeller medicine and school systems and, banking systems and stuff, because you'd be like, well, hold up. We built the pyramids. Like, what are we doing here? Like what is all this? So might call you to a higher place, a place of more sovereignty. You might live your life a little more differently and have a little bit more, I don't know, fire under your ass or purpose, if you thought like, potentially catastrophe could happen at any time, or any of these things are true. So you're less controllable when you're awakened to these types of things. And that's always why anything gets suppressed, right? Because it helps them control you. You do what you're told. You're a good little slave, right? So yeah, the whole world is involved. The catastrophes seem to be cyclical, and there's a lot of different mechanisms of what it is that actually seems to happen on Earth when these things happen. And we can get into that too, if you like. I like to sometimes shut up in case you want to say something, because I could just talk forever.
No, keep going. I'll make it clear if I have a question. But no, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Awesome.
This is great, though. I'm definitely vibing with what you're saying.
Yeah. So one of the things I think is interesting too, one of the catastrophes we know for sure happened was, I think it was about 12,000 years ago, and it was the mini ice age, I believe, the Younger Dryas, I think it's called. I'm not a super expert at remembering all the terms for all the different time periods and what they were called, but I've got the general gist in my mind, and in that experience, we have the woolly mammoths that were flash frozen with green food still in their mouth and their stomach undigested. And to do that, like, again, we could technically pull that off, but we'd have to get a giant creature into a like massive, super cooled instant freeze, and that's not a thing. But especially out of a container, just in the wild, like in nature, for that to occur is a massive and sudden shift. So when we think about people, I think people also might imagine, like, yeah, if something is going to happen, we're going to have some kind of warning, and there might be a shelter, or we might be able to like escape to whatever, some other place on earth that might seem more safe. And if a woolly mammoth can be flash frozen with green food undigested in its stomach, no, you would not have time or notice. You would just
Right.
suddenly be in catastrophe, right? And so we also have this delusion that if there were something, and we have all these movies and all these things, and usually they're like, oh, we just found an asteroid and it's headed right for Earth, but we've got 3 days. Like, or we've got a week,
Right.
or we've got 6 months, or whatever. And in this case, it's like, yeah, no, when these types of catastrophes happen, the whole planet could suddenly shift like you're shaking like a board of puzzle pieces, and water and oceans would be sloshing, and land masses might just drop into the crust, and new ones get thrust up, and total chaos. I mean, there's like no way to predict, right? So that's the type of catastrophe we're talking about, and that we have evidence of happening in the past. And so people then try to figure out, like, what is causing it? Like, and there's the whole mud flood thing, where I think people think that there's like, an elite class of, sometimes it's inner earth advanced breakaway civilization people, sometimes it's just our regular governments that are like super deep state, whatever, Illuminati, sometimes it's like, oh, these are aliens and they've come to enslave us, and we have a whole host of potential baddies that are causing the resets, as people call them. In my experience and understanding, it's actually just nature just has cycles, and this is just like we see winter leads to spring, leads to summer, leads to fall. We have cycles of earth going through its changes, continents rise, continents fall, poles shift, the pole star changes, etc. And so I don't think humans, I think it's a quite full of hubris and arrogance to think that humans could pull that off. That's just my take on that. I think the powers that be would love for us to be so scared of them that we think that they could destroy the whole world in an instant.
Right.
Right? I think they would love for us to think that. But the only force that I know of that can cause anything like this is nature. Nature's a crazy, crazy beast that is absolutely untamable and doesn't give a shit about us, even in the slightest. I say we are not a part of the plan, right? So we look to some natural potential causes of this, if you like, and one of them is the ties into sort of the electric universe, plasma universe model, which again, for some reason, a lot of like classical physicists and cosmologists just deny outright that that's even possible, even though the vast majority of evidence would indicate that that's exactly the type of universe we live in. Whatever type of system you think we're in here, it would still be electromagnetic, and it would still therefore be electric or plasma, right? So even if you're like, space is fake and gay, we're on a flat plane, it's still got plasma, electromagnetics going on, right? So we're still in this system with electromagnetic plasma effects. And so whatever structure this actually takes, right? Whatever form it actually takes, there seems to be, as is true in all sort of electromagnetics that we can find in nature, there's pole flips, the polarity flips. There's plenty of physicists who are alternative physicists who are even into the various cosmologies of what shape or structure the earth or the universe is, that will show you in a small setting like how the poles will just flip, and when it happens like that. There's like a little kind of wobble, and then gone. Right?
Okay.
So when electromagnetics and poles flip, it could cause a lot. Some people think, yeah, it doesn't cause anything, the poles will just flip. Poles will flip and no, nothing will change, earth won't change, climate won't change. I think that's a bit naive. Climate is controlled also by the electromagnetics that are part of this system and underlying all things. And so climate will at least be affected. And all of our land mass has some level of connection to the electromagnetics that are under the land masses, like the lava or the plasma that is down beneath whatever shape we're on, right? So
Yeah.
so there's also that. So land masses can also be affected when poles shift. The sun, whatever you think it is, clearly has an effect on where we're at as well. And the dynamics, the electromagnetics of that object also, they are at least correlated with the effects we see here. They affect each other, right? And so the pole that we're aware we can measure it any day with a regular magnet. We can measure it any day with all sorts of other tools. It's been moving. It's been moving wildly for long time, and it's moving even faster now. From magnetic north is drifting pretty far away from what we used to know when we were children was the magnetic north, right? The North Pole. The pole is a polarity. It's an electromagnetic polarity. And so it, like all things, cells to bodies to trees to everything, there's a north and a south pole that you can measure. And it's true of this body that we call Earth as well. And that's moving, right? And so you can see it moving faster and faster all of the time. You can also see, whatever the sun is, that it's doing very different things than it ever did in our lives. It's the same cycles that we could have monitored with our own telescopes, with our own devices, independent of NASA or any other centralized power. It's doing the same types of things, but it's doing them differently. So the natural cycles of the sun are also changing. And so we see that the sun's doing weird things, our pole's doing weird things, everything is electromagnetic, and we have these cycles of change that are also seemingly electromagnetic. People can find evidence of this going down into the soil. Alternative researchers and alternative historians, alternative geologists will see, oh, here's an electromagnetic change, here's a pole shift, here's a pole shift. But they'll also show you, here's a layer of shells that is covering a giant landmass that hasn't been ocean for hundreds of thousands of years. But these shells are only 40,000 years old or 20,000 years old. And here they are. What is a layer of shells doing on this landmass? Right. And there's one answer to that question, and it's that the ocean shifted and sloshed over the land, and it brought with it all of the sea creatures. This is why we find whales in the Sahara Desert, right? How long has it been since this?
Okay.
Yeah, how long has it been since
Okay.
we've seen the Sahara Desert underwater? Millions of years, a long time. So why is there whales there?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. When the ocean suddenly, when a pole suddenly shifts, perhaps land masses also shift, which perhaps sends the ocean flying wildly about, which would be like a giant tsunami, the likes of which we can hardly imagine, and brings whales and shells and things and drops them in weird places. And then when it finally retreats, they're just there, and there's their skeleton now, right? And so we can see these things all over the earth, very strange patterns. And yeah, so we don't know for sure that it's like just a pole shift that might cause that. There might be other things. But like I said too, we also have flash frozen mammoths. And so the climate also could suddenly shift. So you just imagine you're somewhere on Earth and you're having a nice day, and all of a sudden something happens. Some people think gravity, whatever it is, or about levity and buoyancy, whatever you think it is, will suddenly shift too. You might like float up 12 feet in the air and be like, what the hell is life? Right? Just like suddenly a giant tsunami comes and a whale flies by you, and the ground you were on drops hundreds of feet. And who knows like how big it can be. It seems also, when people look back and study these cycles based on those geologic evidence and electromagnetic evidence and otherwise, that sometimes there's a big one, and it wipes out most life on Earth, and sometimes it's a small one, and things just get kind of displaced, and it's a crazy, and you might write about it in something that becomes known as the Bible and other myths, and might call it the Great Flood. It's like, well, we were mostly fine, but it was pretty crazy for a while, right? Um, So yeah, we've got we've got a lot of weird stuff. We have even things, I wonder sometimes we've got like some of the alternative ancient history. We've got like, really intricately carved springs and gears that are so deep that they would have had to be like 800,000 years ago. And so you're like, man, were humans creating gears 800,000 years ago? That is definitely outside of the accepted timeline. And I don't actually think that's impossible, but I do wonder if actually some of these big land shifts happen and it just looks to us like it's 800,000 years ago and maybe it was only
Okay.
40,000 years ago, I'm not sure. So I'm not quite the expert enough to say whether that's possible or not, but maybe that's an explanation for some of those things.
I would assume you also probably studied Tartaria.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. We should
Yeah.
definitely talk about that and get you on to talk about that sometime as well.
Well, and Tartaria is interesting too, because Tartaria is electromagnetic primarily. They're like, oh, everything's electromagnetic. We can just draw energy out of the ether
Yeah,
and like power
yeah.
anything we want. And so it also reinforces this model and this idea. And it's another reason why plasma physics and electromagnetics are suppressed also, because it could free all of us instantly if we understood that and went back to that technology. But even those types of technologies may have been super recently, as a lot of Tartarian researchers think, much more recently than we're told, which would also indicate another sort of mini disaster not that long ago that kind of like caused us to forget a lot and lose a lot. Um, and yeah, climate shifts have been happening too. Uh, all through this period of time, and we kind of ignore that too, especially right now as we're meant to believe that cow farts and cars are causing climate change, when it's like, no, I mean, this has been happening long before we had cars or anything industrial or anything electronic, or this is happening all throughout our recorded geological history. So it's quite clearly not the problem. The climate is not controlled by human activity. It's controlled by much larger forces than that, these plasma or these electromagnetic forces. The people also who in general study this much more scientifically than I do and would know a lot more of the, scientific details of how and why and what and where, they generally have had their timeline out to about 2070, right? They're like, by 2070 at the most, we're going to have some big cataclysm, pole flip, pole reversal, climate shifts, who knows what, it'll be pretty intense and probably wipe out a lot of life on Earth. And then some researchers are like, no, I think it's a lot closer. I think it's 2050 or whatever. Before I started looking at any of this, I was wandering around one day in Portland, 2018 or so, in Portland, Oregon. And I had like 4 hours to kill before I needed to get to a train to go back to Washington. And I was super bored. I had never used Facebook events before, right? There's like an events
Okay.
category. Yeah. And you can just see like what's around you. I was like, man, I have 4 hours. Maybe there's something cool going on. Who knows? So I'm looking at Facebook events for the first time ever. And it's like, oh, there's this like spirit fair that's like 2 blocks from me. I'm like, oh, I could literally walk there. Like that's when I was also like, I hate things like this more than almost anything. Like I hate I'm a spiritual healer and teacher, and I think most people who say that are just wildly retarded pieces of shit who lie.
Okay.
So that's my bias. So when I saw this spirit fair on this, I know this sounds like we're not talking about the same topic, but we are.
No, no,
uh,
no. What?
so when I saw this spirit fair, I was like, that's going to be really lame. Like, it's going to be full of a bunch of like hucksters and charlatans and just like, plastic doodads that are supposed to like do something to your chakra and just garbage. But I have 4 hours to kill and it's 2 blocks away. So I'm going to go.
Okay.
So I went, despite my desire not to ever go to anything like this. I went and I wandered in, and there's all these booths set up, and maybe people have been to something like this, but it's just this big, huge, giant, open, like warehouse practically. And there's just booths, all these booths. So I'm just wandering around looking, and I'm like, yeah, there's some garbage and there's some garbage and whatever. And I look up and I see this booth, and this guy is just like, his hair is kind of messy. His shirt's like not tucked in all the way. He's just wearing jeans and like an old 70s t-shirt. And he's got this booth that's like hardly set up well. And I'm like, that is a very different vibe than this, like, super hyper, like everything's in the perfect spot and the colors and the sign is like pre-printed and it's all like well managed PR. There's just this dude. So I'm instantly like, I love this man. I don't know who he is, but I love him. So I'm gonna go see what he has at his booth, right? So I walk over to his booth. He's like the only real person there. And I walk up, and right behind him, like, it's not part of his display really. It's just sitting like right behind him, and it's just this book. And when I see it, I like remember that I had a dream about this book the night before. And I was like, what the hell? And he said, what? And I was like, oh, nothing. It's just weird. He's like, what? And I was like, I just, that book behind you, when I saw it, I remembered I dreamt about it last night. I've never seen this book in my life, but like it triggered this memory of a dream where I saw that same exact cover, the title and everything, like that book. That's so weird. He's like, oh, you're who I brought it for. And he hands it to me. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to buy stuff. I've got my bags here. I'm about to get on a train. He's like, no, this is for you. I brought this for you. And I was like, that's weird. Why? He's like, I was told to bring it and that somebody would need it. And it's you. I was like, oh. And so I was like, this is one of those moments where really weird things are happening to me that seem to happen all throughout my life. So I'm like, pay attention, right? It's this book I would never read in a million years, ever, ever. Put it in my bag, whatever. I'm like, this is weird. I would have never gone to this event. I would have never picked up this book. Somebody could have put this book in my hands and been like, you have to read this. And I've been like, that book looks so stupid. I'm never reading that book. But way better books to read. But because I had a dream about it, this guy happened to have it. He was told to bring it. I'm like, well, now I have to read the book, right? Which is how it goes. So, so anyways, I'm talking to this guy. He's like, hey, I've got a talk in like half an hour. You should come to it. And I was like, okay, what is it? He's like, it's just about reflexology. It's like an, Eastern medicine sort of thing where you can find your different ley line points of your body, right? Your chakra points, and you can put like pressure on it and feel better in various ways. It's a healing modality that's kind of woo-woo. I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Sure. I'll go to your talk. I've, again, many hours to kill. So I wander around a little more, do stuff, whatever. I get to his talk. He's talking about reflexology, slightly boring, but I'm like, I don't know. There's like 12 or maybe 20 other people in the room, not many. He's talking, and then a light ball flies through the wall. And this has happened to me many, many times in my life, but it has never once happened to me in front of other people. So I was like, whoa. Are these people all also people who see light balls? Like have experiences with intelligences that are interdimensional, multidimensional, or non-human, whatever, or are they about to like out me? Is something going to happen here? Like I get kind of weirded out. This light ball just flew into the room, and then it flies into his head, and he shakes, and he does this sort of like wiggle, and then he starts talking in a totally different voice, a totally different way than he's been talking. And he starts saying, by 2020, the troubles are going to begin. Things are going to get hard. You might think that the world is ending. It's going to get worse and worse. You might have moments where it's sort of peaceful, but it's going to get worse and worse. And by, mid 2020s, you might start to wonder at some point if all is forsaken and all hope is lost. And he said, but don't worry, for I am with you. And by 2033, like everything's going to be fine again. What he actually said is the Christ consciousness will be reborn. And so by 2033, it'll be great. Don't worry, just trust, just go through it. And then the light bulb popped out of his head and he shook. And then his voice went back to what it had been. And light bulb flew out of the room and left. And I was like, did everyone else? No one here is screaming or freaking out. Like, did no one else see or notice this? And he says, that wasn't me. That was Sai Baba. I've never heard of Sai Baba before. Mind you, this is not a talk by which he said, I'm going to channel somebody, or like, everybody come see Sai Baba. He said he was going to talk about reflexology, and that's it.
Right.
I don't think he planned this, right? But that came and that happened. I, again, didn't even know who Sai Baba was. I had to go research it afterwards and figure out who Sai Baba was. But he said, that was Sai Baba. That wasn't me. That message was for you guys. Sai Baba's this guy. He told us like a little bit about Sai Baba. And then he went on talking about reflexology like nothing weird happened. And I still, to this day, don't know. I don't think anyone in the room understood that he wasn't just like reciting a speech from a guy, like that he was actually, that a light bulb, like this consciousness had come in and channeled through him, which a lot of people, A, would never believe, and B, if they did, they would think it was like a demon or Satan or something evil had happened, you know? So there's like,
Yeah.
there's a couple layers of disbelief and rejection that can go on around this story. But that's what happened. And I was totally tripped out by that. Again, this is 2017 or 18. So I was like, okay, I guess the world's going to start ending in 2020. I mean, I am the biggest skeptic of all. And I was like, that was really weird. I know something happened, but I don't actually know that anything's going to happen in 2020 or whatever. And, you know, I told whoever, I started my Rogue Soul, Rogue Ways at the time at some point. I've told the story to a few people if it came up, you know, if people wanted to know or if it seemed relevant. And then 2020 happened. And then the whole fucking world went insane. And I was like, oh shit, he was right. I was like, oh no. Okay, so here we are. So I was like, well, what's going to happen in the next handful of years? You know, and then I started also getting more and more messages and visions about this time period after that. And people can go read all of them on my Substack if they want. They're all there for people. It's rogueways.substack.com. But I've learned more and more about it. But here we are, mid 2020s, you know, on our way to 2033. And it doesn't seem so bad to me, but also who knows what could happen? Plague, economic collapse, World War III, hot World War III. We've been in World War III for years, but you know
Yeah.
the actual breakout of bombs, and you know, seemingly could happen, and who knows? But not too attached to it. But I'm pretty focused on that 2033, only because when he said 2020, it happened, and so 2033 seems like by then something else will happen too. And so what was interesting for me was to find out that these cataclysmic researchers had said 2070, and some of them were like maybe as early as 2040. And something happened in the last year or so that has to do with measurements from the sun. And again, these are all independent researchers. They're not NASA, they're not funded, they're using their own devices, you know.
Right.
Something has happened with the sun and with our North Pole geomagnetics of the Earth that have caused them to say, oh, maybe it's going to be 2030s. It moved up. Whatever it is has come closer. So they're saying that. So then I'm like remembering this 2033, right? This timeline I was given by, you know, Sai Baba, who's an ascended master, and it seems to fit. And so I'm like, well, there's no accidents here. Like I wasn't brought to that event that I would have never gone to meet that guy who is totally random, not the perfect PR spiritual guy, right? And then have that experience in order for it to not correlate with then later experiences. So I started to learn about all of this catastrophism and this stuff after that. And it just fits a little too perfectly for me. So I don't pretend to know the future, predict the future, but it seems likely to me that massive earth changes are coming as early as this year, as far out as 2033. And that's probably what we can look forward to. And nobody likes to hear that. So nobody really wants to talk about it. But as I found, like I said, a lot of the people who have actually researched this from a scientific level have a similar timeline. And it's been moving up more and more as they get more and more data, or as things start to shift as we go. So a lot of people think that that is purely a function of the sun and the earth, and that the sun might have some sort of a micronova, a sort of like burst of energy, right? And that the earth kind of responds to that, and that's when the poles flip and everything kind of goes crazy. Some people think that there is a second sun, and that's been a long time conspiracy theory sort of thing, that there's Planet X or Nibiru or the Nemesis, and that this second sun is coming. And as it gets closer, as electromagnetics and plasma physics would dictate, the two suns would magnify each other in a way, they would intensify each other's fields. And so more energy would be coming into Earth, and that's what sort of triggers it. And you know, that's who knows? I definitely don't know. I've been shown many visions through my spiritual channels of the potentials for what could happen to Earth, and it looks to be like an electric storm that takes over the whole planet at once. And so, you know, the other messages I've gotten around it is that it is energetic, and you know, so that would mean plasma electromagnetics again, and that it's like a wave that hits the earth. And so this giant influx of energy hits earth, and that's what causes massive shifts, and that it is physical, but that also it's consciousness related. And so that's been interesting for me to investigate as well. as a lot of people think there's something going on with consciousness. And 2012 was a moment in that 2020 was another awakening in that, and that's part of what the corona obsession was, with like shutting down the crown. That's what corona means. And
Right.
that they are trying to use biotechnology and nanotechnology and get our bodies to create its own sort of electromagnetic fields that shut down other energy fields coming in. And we've got Rudolf Steiner and 40 years ago or something saying that they're going to develop a vaccine that disconnects you from your soul. We've got all of this that at least they all sound like very similar sorts of things, that there is something that would like us to not upgrade, so to speak, or ascension, as some of the new age pathologically love and light people call it, right? That would like to stop that from happening. And then there's something else in nature that maybe really wants to encourage that to happen, and for our consciousness to kind of rise up. And, again, if I go back to that message that came through that man at that fair, that was allegedly through Sai Baba, that Christ
Right.
consciousness will return. He didn't say Jesus would come back, right? He said Christ consciousness would return, which would mean that everybody would have a glimpse of, or a higher consciousness, that there would be a Christic energy that anybody would be capable of embodying, connecting with, or rising into. Very different from the sort of Christian idea, traditional fundamentalist Christian idea, that a being will come back to save you. It'd be more like you rise up into your highest consciousness and you save yourself. So
Okay.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty bizarre. So then, a lot of people who are purely in the metaphysical, again, pathologically love and light side of this are, they're like, no, well, we're going to turn into light bodies and we're going to like float into heaven or a higher dimension. I don't know, maybe that could definitely happen. I'm not like the master of all time and space. I don't know every single thing, right? So like, sure, maybe. Some people think that there's like a timeline split, right? And the people who went hard on the vaccines and are, bootlicking and like loving the control and like, deep in that, like they're going to go in this other timeline, and we're going to go in this other more enlightened timeline. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not a predictor of the future. I just get little glimpses, little messages, and little hints, and have really weird experiences, and I report back to people who are interested to know. So who knows? Some
Hmm.
people then kind of want to know, like, is there anywhere on Earth that could be safe?
I
Sure,
was just
maybe,
gonna
right?
ask. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries. So one of the places that seems to have existed many different cataclysms is the Andes, right? We have evidence that those structures have been there for really, really, really long time. So through many cataclysms. And so maybe that's a place. If you imagine where we think the poles might go, there's a magnetic anomaly in the Atlantic. There's another magnetic anomaly over in India, in the Indian Ocean. Those are polar opposite to each other on a globe model, at least. And so, if there's a north and south pole, if they're going to move, do they just flip, or do they shift 180 degrees to those new, where those magnetic anomalies are growing larger and more powerful as we speak? That seems like a good guess, that they actually go 180 degrees instead. If that happens and that drags energy and therefore mass with it, you could guess how continents and oceans might shift, and where tidal waves might go, where tsunamis might go. And so you could predict, and lots of people have maps predicting this sort of thing, that are very interesting, because they also quite accidentally, because the people making them are materialists, they're atheists, they quite accidentally match with maps that Edgar Casey, and there's another psychic, oof, I can't remember who it is. She's the blind psychic, I think, from Romania or something.
Okay.
Anyways, there's a couple people who have predicted different maps that they see for the future of Earth, and they match. So that's really interesting to me, when we see sort of a resonance over many fields and many different types of traditions or thought. And those maps show the same thing. The Andes might be okay. This area of the Rocky Mountains might be okay. I say this because I'm here in the Rocky Mountains. So that's a place where a lot of people who research this side of stuff have moved. There's a person called Ben. Davidson, I think. Sorry, everybody that I suck at names, but Suspicious Observer or Space Weather News. If you want to look into his version of all of this, he's way deep into the details of it. And he purposely moved to Colorado, actually, like happens to be like 20 miles from me. So he's here. He thinks that's no, it wasn't Helena Blavatsky. She might, though. That'd be interesting. Yeah, I'd like to actually look into that. Sorry, I just saw that in the chat.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, she might have a similar map. That'd be interesting to see. Anyways, he's moved here to Colorado, so that's a place where some people think might be okay. Essentially, anywhere high enough and far enough from a coastline is like a good guess. But it's still not, you still will never know, like, because continents can drop out of existence and new ones can rise up out of ocean, right? So like you just don't know actually. But yeah, if you want to, Baba Vanga, that was it. Thank you. Baba Vanga was the blind psychic who also I think had the map, unless I'm getting her confused with someone else. But so yeah, Ben Davidson, I think that's his name, Suspicious Observer. He just released his 4th documentary, and he summarizes all of this without the psycho-spiritual stuff that I'm talking about. He summarizes all of this in the more materialist way, really, really well in his most recent documentary, the name of which I'm not recalling at the moment, but you can get it free on his YouTube. So if anyone's like, what the hell is she talking about? Go watch that, and it could be fun for you or terrifying, depending on you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so someone in the chat is talking about change the poles on a motor, it spins backwards and the gyroscopic effect rotates. The Cherenkov effect. So yeah, I mean, like imagine the oceans just suddenly like being spun. Like if the mass under them could spin, they almost stay in place and then try to catch up. And that is going to cause such an intense amount of sloshing, right? Yeah. Yeah. So it's intense. And this is where we're at.
That's crazy.
Yeah, is the sun going to go micronova? I don't know. Is another planet / sun going to come by us and bring a bunch of chaos and destruction? I don't know. Is there going to be like a ton of meteors? We go through some sort of meteor field, or it comes by? I don't know. What's the actual mechanism? I don't know. I don't know, but I know that the evidence of it happening cyclically is there, and that we're at a time where it is predicted. It's predicted now and into the next few decades. As you've seen, I have reason to believe it's very, very soon.
Okay, so give or take now or in the next couple decades, that's your thought?
Yeah, the people who are more materialist about this are like 2070 max. 2070 max, you might have, what is that, 40 some years. For me, you've got somewhere between 4 to 7 years. I mean, you might have a day. It might be tomorrow. I'm not, again, no one shall know the day or the hour, right? But
right.
From that timeline, based on the experience I had, that's what I would roll with if I was a betting man, I'd put my money on that.
And do you have any, I know you said you don't know, but do you have any like thoughts or feelings or anything that comes to you that makes you think you have an idea of what it may look like or what form it may take when the time does come? Or
yeah, I mean, I do think those few places, I think those maps that I just suggested are actually pretty decent if you wanted to try to guess and be a betting man too. You might you might go off some of those, and again, I've been given visions of the future for my whole life. I've had quite extreme situations that are like near death, like situations which I chose the timeline that I was going to live out, and this is the one I chose, which is quite interesting to me. Okay. And so I've seen some things, and I saw also when choosing my timeline that I wanted to return to in my near-death experience, I saw the end of my life. And I was old, so I don't apparently die in this. Maybe, again, I'm open to all things. I don't get attached to any of this because this is all a grand experiment to me. But it seems as though I saw myself at about 80. A psychic who I did not ask to tell me this told me I was 97, which terrifies me. 97, like, oh my God, I'm only 44 and it's already rough. Like, this is crazy. So if I get to that age anyway, whatever I saw, I seemed very old to myself when I saw this at the age of 16. and it was like a utopia. So so right now I can't imagine how we get there, especially if these big cataclysms are coming. But again, I can imagine consciousness actually raising. I can imagine that humanity actually does become better. I can imagine that sort of part of this process is a lot of people who don't have self responsibility, can't imagine life outside their body, don't have any sort of higher level understanding of self or the cosmos or just spirituality or however you want to describe it. I can imagine that they are lost in all of that and don't quite make it through. And I can imagine, therefore, that the people who do are a little bit clearer, more highly connected, or whatever, and that is a form of Christ consciousness returning. I can imagine that people do have significant awakenings as they're faced with these different challenges. If you look at even the challenges you faced in your life so far, it's essentially what you do. You sink or swim, right? You either fall deeper under the chaos of your mind and your heavy heart and your burdened soul, or you burn through it and rise up higher. And this is the alchemical process of mind and of soul, is what we're all doing here. And so I can imagine that there's a purifying, clarifying aspect to facing all these challenges. And then so that we do actually create something much better that is like a utopia. I'm not in any way, I would have never expected that. Like, I'm not an optimist, as optimistic as I am. It's based on realism, right? It's based on what I've actually seen and experienced. And so some may even call me a pessimist, but I'm really just a realist. But if you would have asked me before these visions, before these experiences, like what humanity's headed toward, I'd be like, hell. I mean, like, we're not capable of anything. Like, I can't see a single capable person in my life. So everybody's just really traumatized and always making garbage choices, and like nothing's going well and nobody's okay. And like, we're not headed anywhere good. But then, seeing some of these other things, seeing how people have responded actually, even to things like COVID and whatever, I was very disappointed to see how many people were absolutely retarded through all of that. But I was even more
Yeah,
surprised to see how many people woke up. I was like, oh, I really
that
didn't
is true
expect
too.
that, right? I
That
was
is
like,
true too.
oh, here you are. Like, congratulations, you woke up. Like, that's pretty amazing, actually. I just didn't expect it. So, we can look at all the people who didn't and be sad, but we can look at all the people who did and be like, okay, all right, maybe there's something here, right? And so if
Yeah.
something like that continues, I can actually see that what's left after a sort of big cataclysmic potential, whatever I don't really want to call it a reset, because I think that implies that there's, again, intentional control over it, and that's not how I see
Right.
it.
Right. Yeah.
But that sort of thing, I can see that we would come out brighter and shinier on the other side. I'm not also, I'm a big fan of realizing that media is meant to control your mind, and that most people's vision of the future is based on things like The Walking Dead, right? And like
Yep.
just shows that you've seen over and over and over and over, that show you that when there's no government or there's no whatever, that people descend and eat each other and they like rape each other, and like you only can have Campbell's soup for the next 1,000 years, and like, dark shit. And I'm
Yeah.
like, there's actually no reason, there's no evidence that that's how we act in these catastrophes. And every time I've seen a catastrophe in my life, I've seen people do amazingly heroic and beautiful things and take each other in and help each other through. And Asheville is such a good example. Our government, yeah, they failed us. Of course, they're pieces of shit. Why wouldn't they? But look what people did. Dude, the Amish came up and built houses for like a year. They just stopped not that long ago,
Yeah.
building
Yeah.
houses for people for free, right? And so this is what humans actually do, is we rise up and we take care of each other and we get through. So I have no reason to think, Bane, Batman, whatever, this kind of shit is like how people actually behave. I only have movies to tell me that. I don't have reality to tell me that. In reality, what I see is the opposite. So I hope people can notice that programming, can actually identify the actual experiences in their life that show otherwise, and that those far outweigh the times that you've seen people fail each other, and that you can sort of rewrite that expectation of what a catastrophe would look like, or what humanity would look like through a catastrophe. I think it's much more important than trying to figure out whether the sun's going to explode, or whether this or that's going to happen, or how a catastrophe would actually take place. Like, I don't think that matters. I don't think we're ever going to have control over it, so who cares? But I do think it matters that you identify, your programming around it and undo as much of that as possible. And then, especially for yourself, you can say, well, I'm going to do the good thing and the right thing in moments like that. I'm going to be the Amish in Asheville, right? Like
Right.
I'm going to be on that side of things. And I already knew I was going to die the moment I was born. So that's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about how I live in the in between time. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Lindsey, this time just flew by. This has been a great conversation. I've appreciated all the information you've given us. And I would really love for you to come back if you would grace us with your presence again. Before you go, though, can you please let everyone know where they can find you, and if you'd like to share any projects you have going on, your books, all that stuff. Take as much time as you'd like, please.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been awesome to chat with you, and your audience is clearly amazing. So I love that. This roguesoul.org is my site. You can find everything I do there. I have books. I have a fictional trilogy. If you like to read fiction, it's amazing. It talks about basically everything we've talked about here, but far more. And the cycles that humanity goes through as we rise up into our higher consciousness. So check that out. You can also get them. You can listen to them on Audible. You can read them. You can get them from Barnes Noble, all the books, all the places. I do teach classes, especially on spiritual techniques and processes and skills. I also do one-on-one sessions with people if people want to get deep in, connect with their spirit, their higher self, their guides, or get some tarot. I got channel messages for you, one-on-one blessings. I also have orgone in the shop. That's something also is very powerful, cool to keep around, especially if you're doing any sort of meditation or spiritual work, manifestation prayer. That's not just beautiful as you see, but very, very powerful too. Okay. So you can also get custom ones. If there's nothing in there that is calling to you, you can order a custom pillar or a votive, and I do both on demand. And then I have a blessing tonight that is at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's via Zoom. It's a group thing. There's people signed up for it. They're always really powerful. If you like to meditate, if you like to connect to your higher self, if you like to receive blessing energy, then you can come to that. Join us tonight. Anybody can come from anywhere in the world. They're also recorded, so if you can't come live, you can still tap into that. Doesn't matter. Spirit knows no bounds. Consciousness has no time or space that it's limited to. So it doesn't matter where you are when you connect to the blessing. You can still join us with that. Super uplifting. This is because there's a blood moon eclipse tonight in my traditions. Yeah, in my traditions, those are really powerful moments, and especially in an eclipse, it's a time to go within, not outside of you, but deep into your own heart and mind, and build that inner light and that inner consciousness. And so we're doing that before this big blood moon eclipse tonight. So I hope to see anybody there who that feels interesting too. And otherwise, you can catch me on a Rogue Soul, every podcast platform. Rumble. My YouTube got reinstated recently, which is like probably pointless, but here we are. So if you want to follow me on YouTube, you can find me there. So that's I think all the things. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Also, I totally forgot to ask, but thanks to someone in the chat here. What was the book that was given to you?
Oh,
if you can share it.
I'll share it. It's so like, I'm still so judgmental of it. It was called Peace at Last. Something about John Lennon.
Okay.
Which I love the Beatles. They're cool, but I'm just like, nah, I wasn't connected to John Lennon. And then and the idea of the book is that it's this guy who John Lennon came to as like John Lennon ghost after death and wanted to show what death is like. And so he brought him through like the experience of dying and what a soul does and what earth is for and what we're all here for. And like, that sounds so stupid to me. I'm like, oh, John Lennon came to you. I bet. Like, I just like, I'm so judgmental about it. I'm sorry. That's just who I am. But I'm like, yeah, right. But also when I was reading it, I was like, yeah, that is exactly what happens to you when you die. And that is exactly why we're here on earth. And yeah, that is exactly what this is all about. So if you're like me and you can get past your judgment about John Lennon or his ghosts, then you might like it. It's a pretty simple little book. It's pretty quick. I ignored all the parts about like John Lennon walking into the room and his ghost and all this stuff. I was just like, I just can't. It's so cringy to me. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but because it came
Yep.
to me in that way, I was like, I gotta see like what's in here. And yeah, there's actually some pretty good, interesting stuff about what the soul goes through after death.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, so you got something out
Yeah.
of it. That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. It confirmed some things I already understood. It helped me understand experiences I'd already had. Like I said, I had a near death experience in which I picked my timeline to come back, but I did not understand that as a near death experience. I thought it was just a crazy, I didn't know what to call it because I don't have a background in my world of people who are into any of this. So I didn't have
Okay.
words for it all. I didn't have a framework for it. It was just crazy things would happen to me. And I'd be like, I don't know. I'm either crazy or life's weird. It's one of those things, right? So I'll just roll with it. And so that book also helped me be like, oh, that's what that was. Oh, I was dying. Oh, I died. I died and came back, you know,
Oh.
things like that. So yeah, it was also other near death experiencers would be like, yeah, that was a near death experience. And I was like, oh, okay, word. Like I have no reason to like
Yeah.
doubt you, right? That seems like it. It seems to jive.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, maybe that's something we can talk about too. Near death experiences. So
Oh, it was wild. It's a good story. I'd love to share it with you.
okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, I'll put that down, and I'll definitely be in touch. And again, it's great to see you again, Lindsey. I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming
Oh,
on.
you too. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
All right, we'll see you later. Take care.
You well.
All right, bye bye. All right, guys, we are done for the day. On the 4th, we have William Ramsey coming in. On the 6th, we have Adam from the Truth Desk coming back, which will be a banger because he's a real mask. Pleasure to meet him, and it's great to bring him back. What else? On the 6th, we also have Ryan Dawson coming back. On the 13th, myself and one of my co-hosts, Hadsberg, we have been invited onto the JJ Vance show on Friday the 13th. And then let's see, I think on the 19th, I believe it's the 19th, we have Crow 777 coming on. So that is just what we have booked so far. We have between then and the 19th, we'll probably have at least, I don't know. We'll see. At least 5 or so more shows than that. But it was a pleasure having Lindsey on. We'll definitely have to bring her back. In the meantime, if you guys can please check out the Divulgence podcast on YouTube, please subscribe. Also, please subscribe on Rumble. We'd like to try to bring our numbers up a bit on Rumble so that we can maybe do some more stuff on there because it's just nicer. You can say what you want. You can do what you want. And no bullshit. Also, please, you can check us out on X. You can get audio versions of the podcasts on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check the links of the shows because we are affiliated with Scott Horton and the Scott Horton Academy. If you go to scotthortonacademy.com/divulgence, you will get a discount. Also, we are now affiliated with Ollie Demigard and the Demigarding Experience. His current offer right now, I think he has, like I mentioned before, if you go to his website, Light on Conspiracies, you give your email address, you will get a free digital copy of his 2-volume book, Coup d'etat in slow motion, which is about the assassination of Olaf Palme, which is a great book. Also, check a few episodes back. He came on and kind of walked through the whole assassination. But also, he has his April Freedom Retreat going on this year in Bali. So he's giving discounts to my listeners and viewers as well. So please check that out. But yeah, in the meantime, everyone take care, be well. We got the war, like Lindsey was talking about, World War III. Hopefully it doesn't turn into World War III, but obviously a war has started. A few Americans have died. A few American jets have been shot down accidentally, which is terrible. And places like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, yeah, all over the place are kind of getting hit in addition, and I'm sure Israel's probably going to get hit more in addition to Iran. I don't know. From what I see, the people have mixed feelings, but obviously war is no good. So hopefully they clip this up pretty soon. But yeah, peace and love to everyone, and stay safe out there. Thank you.